Yoga Mosu Podcast.
It's Mr. and Mrs. Yogi, back again.
Yes, we are back from our exciting experience in Miami, here to finish up the Niyamas with
Isvara Pranidhana.
very well pronounced, Mary.
Thank you.
So the term Isvara Pranidhana,
Oh boy.
Pranidhana is made up of two words. Isvara, which translates as Supreme Being, God, Brahman, Ultimate Reality, or True Self, and
Pranidhana.
thank you, which means fixing. In most translations of this niyama, we're advised to surrender to the Supreme Being or Higher Self, which in essence means cultivating a deep and trusting relationship with the universe and or God, whatever you want to label it, and making each action in coordination or in connection with something bigger than us.
Right, it's not like blindly surrendering. It's sort of like faith.
Yes, it is.
And even in AA, that's one of the tenets, is that you have to know that there's a higher source.
Yeah, I included that concept, not AA, but the concept that you're talking about in one of my notes here, so I'm going to hold off on speaking on that. So we like to apply these yamas and niyamas to our relationship and how it plays into our lives.
Yes.
Would you like to go first?
Yes.
All right.
So, we've mentioned on the podcast before that we practice Judaism in conjunction with our yoga practice. So we use meditation and the calming of our minds to connect with God and separate ourselves from like the outside world. I can slow down my mind and my body and get into a state where nothing exists but me and God. And I think, like, if we're talking about how our relationships and our lives connect with yoga, that's sort of what it comes down to me, as far as Isvara Pranidhana and yoga. Because, I mean, I've done a little bit of research, and I know a lot of people will dedicate their practice to God or whatever they need to. I definitely see that's something that we do, because that meditation or that movement, it's not just stretching for us.
No.
So in a more general sense, that's sort of my first example.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to expand on that, because my first one would go with a phrase that many of you have probably heard, let go and let God. And so this is probably one of the hardest lessons for me to learn personally, just in general. So whatever you label it as, it's a belief that there's a force much bigger than us, but yet we can still tap into it. So I can say that in our relationship, we've had to let go of circumstances before we got married and trust deeply that we would be together, even though we were forced to physically be apart. So by letting go of what we couldn't physically control and believe and trusting fully, in our case, God, we kept asking, having faith, and we were truly and miraculously brought together. Mm-hmm. Even though we couldn't touch it in front of us, we couldn't physically hold each other through those times, but the faith and letting go of what we could not control, mm-hmm. and the trust of that we would be together because we wanted it and we gave it up and surrendered that control to our higher power, is what I believe brought us ultimately together.
I'll dovetail off of that.
Sure.
And I mean, I knew we'd have some overlap, so I definitely have a similar point that, you know, we've had hard times, whether they're relationship or financial or business or whatever it might be. And I think everyone can relate to that as well. But we put our hope and our faith in God, and we just believe that He will bring about what's meant to be. I believe that very strongly. And I think that has given me a little bit of a positive spin on life. So when things aren't going the way we want to, it doesn't always, you know, we really want something to happen. And I don't know what that might be. But if we really, really want it, that doesn't always mean it's right. It might be completely wrong, you know? And you have to realize if something's really, really not going the way you want it to, whether that's our relationship, we're having fights, or our business, it's just not growing, you realize, okay, maybe it's not meant to be. And that's okay, because it's trusting that God is going to bring about the destiny that's meant for you.
Yeah.
So we've had to put our hope in God. when we're feeling low or abandoned, feeling like our plans are falling apart, we just recognize that it's part of a bigger picture and that it'll be okay. And it kind of helps put things in perspective and keep it positive. So it's not always sad when things aren't going your way.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, maybe this is in retrospect after the events happen, but to know this moving forward, just in anything that might come at us in the future,
yeah,
that there's no mistakes, there's no failures, there's only lessons.
Definitely.
And I'm going to dovetail off of that. So surrendering to the process of knowing that sometimes things take longer than we want them to or expect them to, but believing that they will happen. So we may not have known the how things were going to happen for us. For example, getting a house after 1 year of marriage, living in an apartment. Like, we just put our trust and intention that it would happen, knowing why we wanted it, and the how showed up.
Right.
Because the belief was strong enough in not only the why, because, that's clarity, and clarity's power.
That's a good example, actually, to jump on, is, we had actually set our hopes and our dreams on this one specific house, and we really, really liked it. And we were like, as soon as we saw it, we said, this is the one. We really need this one. We tried to get an offer in and everything, and it just fell through.
Yeah.
Someone else got it before us, and it was taken off the market, and we felt like that was our dream house, and we were just so crushed.
Yeah.
But that was a great example of realizing about a month later, oh, there's this other house that's even better, and we hadn't even realized that it was out there.
Exactly.
And that other house would have been a dump for us, and it was so small, and it wasn't perfect. Even though we thought that was the one we really, really wanted, we just needed to wait and see what really was meant to be.
And I think that, that surrendering and that belief and having faith in the process, if we had never looked for that other house, like it all comes back to, by surrendering and letting go and trusting in a higher power, whatever that is for you, we're not going to tell you, it helps you take action rather than being paralyzed in fear.
Yeah.
Because there's no fear when you have, you can get over your fear.
Yes.
When you have faith in a higher power and trust in that power, that the actions you're taking are leading you toward what you're surrendering to, right? So, in other words, we wanted a house. We thought it was that house in that location, in that neighborhood. And we kept getting, shut down.
Yeah.
Now, had we not believed in a higher power or something greater than us, we would get ultimately frustrated, impatient, because we couldn't control that.
Yeah.
Well, what happens? You can't control traffic, right? You get pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that traffic is the greatest example to surrender to a higher power, but ultimately, with yoga, and this being the ultimate, right, the last niyama, surrendering to a higher power, you start to let go and let God, or fill in the blank for yourself, so that we're not wrestling with those things that we can't physically control.
Mm-hmm.
And then the process truly can take shape and manifest for what it's supposed to be for you. And I'm going to dovetail that.
Now I get to go.
It's your number 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the principle of Isvara-Pranidhana infers that surrender or adherence to a higher power gives your life a deeper meaning. And I think it gives basically every action in your life a purpose, which I love.
Yeah.
So as we go through our life, the work, our time together, fun and games, everything that we do is elevated because there is a purpose to it. And I like that because it's not rigmarole. It's not just going through the actions anymore. It's beautiful. It gives it meaning and relevance. And I think that's so cool. I look at other people and I can see if they don't believe in a higher power, if they don't have that in their life, they really are just sort of floating along. There's no structure or any kind of box in there. They don't have anything to give that elevation, that meaning to their life. It just, food is food, and the grass is the grass. It's just there.
Yeah, we all need something. I'm not a big Johnny Cash fan, but I do believe in the song as someone that experienced what he sings about is sooner or later God will cut you down. because, he's talking about just freelancing it, and just plodding along and doing whatever you want.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, God will cut you down. And it may not be referred to as God in your world, but again, coming back to the surrender to a higher power, something bigger than yourself, this force that we all can tap into. And it's not exclusive for anybody. Whatever you want to label it is fine, but it's there, and you can tap into it. If I can, if Mary can, you can, and so can your friend, and so can anyone else who's here living on this earth.
When you come to the point where you realize there's something more to this life and this world than just eating cereal and going to work, all of a sudden your whole world just explodes into color, and you realize that it's deeper, it's more. There's actually things to do, and there's meaning to it. I can't even explain it in words. It just fills me up. It fills me with passion.
Well, I'm gonna finish off that thought with my last. So I believe that attached to this surrender to a higher power is the surrender and full immersion of love. So when we go through changes in the external as a couple, things in our lives with work situations like you mentioned, health, events, etc., that our surrender and faith for us in God, love, and our relationship is greater and stronger than any of the variables externally that come and go throughout our journey. So that's very helpful and empowering to know that you don't know what's coming at you externally. But if you are rooted in something bigger than you, you could always come back to that. Because the variables are going to change.
Yes.
Again, going back to the process of trying to just wrestle with those and say, it's not fair, I want to control this. What you resist persists. And I know I'm cliche here. I'm like throwing out classic self-help lines.
They're cliches for a reason.
So if you do resist against these things, you're only adding fuel to them. But if you can let go and focus on what you want and then throw it up to your higher power, it's not only liberating, it's loving, because you can focus on the life and the love and the people and the relationships in front of you without being so mad or frustrated or disappointed that you cannot control that thing in the time that you want it to happen. Letting go, and not that it's easy to do that, and surrendering is very powerful, I believe, and loving.
I love it. Maybe we can discuss what we're going to move on to next.
Well, yeah, I think, what are we moving on to next?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
We've talked about the yamas and the niyamas. If you haven't heard all of them, I strongly encourage you to go back to our first yama. We've gone through them now, and they've been so helpful and great reminders for us.
In future episodes, as we talk more about our lives and like things going on, I think doing these episodes with the yamas and the niyamas and how we can use these in our relationship, that as you listen to the future episodes where we're talking about our lives, that you can have an understanding that there's a basis of this foundation in what we do and how we conduct ourselves. Check us out on Instagram at Mr. and Mrs. Yogi, no underscores, no dots, no dashes. And you can check out our website, which is being revamped for the Yoga Moves You podcast, which obviously we're a part of, yogamovesyu.org, and all of the other social media outlets. Just look for the Yoga Moves You podcast. Thank you! Good night!
Yoga Moves You Podcast.